Yeah, well, and here we are, Chris, and would love to
One more time.
exactly. Welcome to Faster Horses, Cliff. It's great to see you.
Great to be here with you guys.
Definitely. It's the fall. Exciting things happen. Autovate's around the corner. Just, I think we're really blessed to have you right at this time, and looking forward to talking with you a little bit. For folks that don't know too much about your history, I'd love for you to really just kick things off and tell us the story of how you founded the Banks Report and what really motivated you to, look differently at the car business through that lens,
Right.
and really where you are today because of that.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I've been around the auto industry, auto retail industry for about 35 years now. And then ended up at Ward's, which has had a couple of different
Yeah.
transitions over the years, but I ended up there in 2000 as a editorial assistant or assistant editor or whatever, and left there 10 years later as an editorial director. Uh, really, it was during that time where I started to get the vision of starting something that looked like the Banks Report that focused on investment in the automotive retail space, both at the dealership level and at the vendor level. And was able to get that started. Joe Herman was my initial partner. He was a longtime personality, and not a personality, but a leader in the automotive retail space. He was one of the brainchilds behind the first dealer group, car dealer group, IPO, United Auto Group. He was one of the early architects of that. COO at Group One Automotive. He was president of Potemkin for several years. So he knew his way around the dealership, but he also knew his way around Wall Street and the manufacturer. So he was a good friend, and we decided to put this together. And that's how we got started. 2013, and in 2016 is when we did our first event. I did it in Princeton, New Jersey, and then the next year moved it to Austin, Texas, where we did we actually rebranded it as Autovate, the conference. So we've been doing this since 2016 in some form or fashion. And then I think 3-4 years ago, we moved it to Scottsdale. You know Austin well. In fact, you were we met in the downtown Austin one night.
We did
during one of the Autovate conferences. Yeah.
We sure did. Yeah. No, I mean, I remember being excited about it, and I did not cry, but I was sad when you moved it to Scottsdale. So
we love yes. Yeah.
So we've heard a lot of the story about Autovate, but really, what's the story behind it? Why are people going? Everybody has their own myth about this conference, but tell us what's important about it.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I really got into to do a newsletter or a report on that was print based, and didn't really see myself as a event guy. Although I had done a couple of events at Ward's Dealer Business. We had a couple of really successful ones, and then did a stint with Digital Dealer and ran that for a year and a half, 2 years. No, it was out of necessity. We needed revenue, and it was one way to get revenue. And it's interesting. I think I was one of the early pioneers in this. I was just at a newsletter conference earlier this year in New York, and they were talking about how you have a newsletter. You have to lean into developing relationships with your readers. You have to have an event, or lean into events. And I was like, well, okay, did that. Let's go down the checklist. What the challenge for us, I think, from early on was Joe. Our first year, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, just a couple months after we went live. So the whole first year, that was, and he lived courageously and valiantly all the way to the very end. And told me one day that he was fighting to the very end because he was hoping. He said, "Look, I know there's not hope for me here, but," he said, "hopefully the doctors will learn something that can help future people with this disease."
Yeah.
So he was willing, to lend himself to humanity as and I don't want to say guinea pig, but as a research, so that was the kind of man that he was. I still feel the effects of that today. His son, Chris, was very instrumental early, for several years with the company. I mean, he has an ad agency in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, and it's just a phenomenal human being. But I think one of my goals for Autovate was to create an event that was a high level, and everyone says this, but I'll tell you what, we spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
We spend a great deal of money. You've seen it, Tim, and just on the food and the networking opportunities. We really don't spare any expense. And we do some extra little things that really make it, I think, a special, unique event. I
agree with all that. Yeah.
And I think the high level, just creating that environment that's above and beyond what you get at a normal conference. And I've been able to do that. The last 3 years with Alexia Veneri at DAS Technology. I mean, with the relationship there, and she and I have the same mindset there, and so not really. I don't want to say we leave money on the table, but I think to some extent when we could certainly cut back on some of those expenses if we wanted to, but
sure,
that takes away from the event, and takes away from that. You got to differentiate somehow, and I do that, and I think that's how we do it. One, with that, but secondly, also with the content, we don't have presentations. We might have one or two from an analyst in the space, but none from vendors. I mean,
that's right.
All Q&A with me on stage, and they're really not scripted conversations.
No, they're not.
We know that we know what the topics are going to be, but I spend a couple months prior to the event just reading everything I can get, everything I can get my hands on about every company and person. So I think I'm pretty well researched and well versed in knowing what the right questions are. And I'm a journalist at heart. I don't do gotcha journalism, but we don't shy away from tough questions either from players. I mean,
when you start talking about large amounts of investment into automotive related solutions, you got to get down to the brass tacks at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I know where my swim lane is. I mean, I'm not going to go all in on product conversations as much because I'm not, I can't pick apart the product. I mean, I'm a journalist who connects the dots. I look at the bigger picture,
right?
So, and I'm telling you, I learned early on in my days at Wards, as a reporter that, I could ask 20 dealers about one company and I'd get 20 different answers. Shoot, I bought I was getting my Honda serviced last year at a dealership, and I was talking with the general manager and the service advisor, and one guy loves CDK and the other guy loves Reynolds and Reynolds. I mean, so
one day you'll find someone that loves Techion too.
Yeah, well, I did. There's a service director at one of the Chevy dealerships out here in my area that loves Techion. So yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. But yeah, I think the capital going back. I mean, this is my Wards days. I didn't know what I didn't know early on.
Right.
I mean, when I first started, I didn't know what question. It took me a while to understand. So the people I was talking to, some of them were investors, in these startups. And then I started figuring out, okay, there's an exit. They're not just in this because they believe in the product, or they believe there's a nice exit at the end here. But I think when the light bulb went off, guys, was when Michael Dell's family office, MSD Capital, was trying to buy the Asbury Group.
Yes.
In the mid 2000s.
I remember that.
And that really, I broke that story. And I knew it was a big story because Business Week followed up 2 days after I first wrote about it. And now MSD was a big investor in Asbury at the time, but they were trying to buy the whole thing. Or when I say buy the whole thing, there was another player involved. They were going to split it down the Mississippi River east-west. I mean, there was all sorts of scenarios, but the manufacturers killed the deal. But that was when that was like the aha moment for me that, this isn't, there's a big global, financial component to all this.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, AutoNation with Jeffrey Lambert from Sears and Bill Gates' family office involved in that, Cascade Investments. And I mean, so once I started figuring out and learning that, then you start looking for patterns and you start looking for telltale signs. I think Mark O'Neill at DealerTrack, publicly traded company, Reynolds was a publicly traded company until 2006. ADP was until it spin off in 2014. So there was a lot of information out there that I started learning how to put together and connect the dots and start seeing how to, somewhat, understand who's looking for what and where companies are in their life cycle. So
right.
So I just from studying in the perspective of history, in the context of history, I'm able to, pretty much know when companies are looking to sell or looking to acquire, or even with.
What do you think is the big industry push for this Autovate that's coming up at the end of September now? Is there new technologies that you're really looking at, or some real interesting companies or potential acquisitions? Like what's
things
the
that
storyline?
I'm not going to. We may address publicly. I mean, but certainly, there are companies. I mean, S&P Global is looking to spin off the mobility division, and the crown jewel there is Carfax. They just, they named Bill Eager the new CEO there, the mobility division, longtime lead at Carfax. J.D. Power named a new president CEO this year. These companies are all looking at what the next play is. I mean, Thoma Bravo owns J.D. Power. So I think we will see, maybe not this year, but next year, some big moves. I think Brookfield's looking at CDK, looking at what the next play there is going to be. There are some others that are under the radar. We'll see a couple deals maybe this year that could be in the $700 million to $1.5 billion range.
And there he goes baiting us again, Chris, with the just under the radar $1 billion deal. Yeah.
I was wondering if I was an investor in one of these, I would need to be on the board somewhere of one of these.
Yeah. Well, it's Cliff. It is where most of industry is right now. Is lots of people call this the fourth transformation or the fifth transformation in industry, and there's no doubt about it. Automotive unto itself is under a tremendous amount of accelerated change, and I think I know this about Autovate. You said it already, but it is other level
right.
in terms of the quality and the content that's there. And I hadn't thought about it until you just said it, but it's unscripted, right? It's very natural conversations to catch people in their element in terms of them to be able to explain their visions and the reasons they exist which which is fascinating to me right now because of the legacy companies that are there at the event. Some that are really big and may grow through acquisition, others who may have
Right,
just
right,
startups nibbling at their ankles right now to be able to do things faster, better, and cheaper because that's what
uh,
AI, just to put a label on it, AI, for the
right,
first time ever, we have a technology that allows two people,
right,
figuratively, two people in a coffee shop can do just
right.
about anything Salesforce can do, right? So
Well,
it's these are
yeah, no,
interesting
I think to your
times. I
point, and
mean,
I
go
think
ahead.
Chris, you asked me, and I didn't answer. I mean, I went directly to the M&A side, but you asked me about the new technologies or whatever. AI is going to dominate the conversation this year, and I think it's just going to be a natural part of the conversation. We're not going to force it um, to some extent. I mean, obviously the questions are going to dictate some of that too, but but these conversations are going to be on so many levels because. Uh, I I'm still wrestling, and I think I will be for. I think all of us are going to be wrestling for quite a while. But you know where AI is going to take us. Um, and I think it can be an overwhelming conversation. So I'm going to try to try to keep it a little more narrow. I think, but because otherwise, and we can
Sure,
go in all sorts of places. But uh, certainly I think the CEOs of these companies are struggling with what does this really mean? How can I gain an advantage in the market? Um, I would think Alex Vetter is looking okay ways. How do we juice the stock price with this? What can we do? Reynolds and Reynolds is launching their stuff, and I think the real question has to be how real is some of this versus myth or smoke and mirrors. I think we're all dealing with that, with that, right? I, I, and I don't
totally.
know. I mean, my own personal view right now is that um, internally in a company, I mean, you got to keep some very narrow guardrails on what your employees are doing. One, there's the cybersecurity issue, which is huge. It doesn't not get talked about nearly enough with with AI. Um, and then second, I mean, I think I would be very targeted within my company in terms of what my employees are working on. Can it help coding? It certainly looks like it does. That you can. It makes coding much easier and simpler. So you lean into that. Um, I think the advertising and marketing industry, I think that those agencies and firms, to me, that those are the most at risk because if you think about it, a dealership can hire a person or two people to sit down and use AI to write all your press releases. You can start at some point very soon. They're going to be able to start creating videos that are lifelike and nearly impossible to tell, and creating their own advertising. I mean, we're there
Well,
now. Yeah,
you
yeah.
see that on
So
LinkedIn. Yeah, I think you see it
yeah,
right now on LinkedIn that you've got there's a number of folks that
right,
work at dealers that are starting to build their
right.
videos with AI rather than doing it the old
Oh,
fashioned way
right,
with an
right. I
iPhone in
mean,
the lot, right?
or having
Yeah.
a film crew come out and film you in the showroom, film big daddy dealer there, doing doing a TV commercial. I mean, so
I think
yeah,
that's a lot of what Tim and I talk about is this aggregation of data, marketing communications, how that all kind of gets put together at the dealer level, and certainly the challenges of a dealer being able to do it themselves. But these new technologies, these new companies, as a Reynolds or a CDK or a Techion like come in with new solutions, all of a sudden the basis, those platforms, those DMSs or the CRMs that are out there, all of a sudden could be a lot more or potentially a lot different and we viewed them for
Yeah,
the
and
last
it's funny
25,
you say it. I mean,
40
because I've
years
been
in some
predicting that
cases.
for a while, but I was predicting it based on the connected vehicle and automakers creating data
Right.
platforms where the car essentially would become the new DMS, so to speak, um, or the
Right.
connected data vehicle platform. But now AI is upending even so much of that. And there's a lot of intriguing companies. I mean, they're raising money. I mean, that are going to be there or have been at Autovate. I mean, geez, you look at these two guys from Toma and what they did this year, going from dealership to dealership and had no clue what they were doing. And they raised what, $17 million from Andreessen and others, big name investors. I mean, holy cow. And all of a sudden they're taking on Numa and
Right.
Stella and some of these others. So yeah, I think the world, it's an exciting time. It's a lot like everyone says it, but it's a lot like 99, 2000, 2001. Um, I,
Well, that's
It's going
yeah.
to be, go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to say. I mean, I was going to ask you, and it's a lot like question, being that what you've seen in the industry and what you've been through, what you've seen with. Just take it from the journalism side in terms of the
yeah,
narratives that define what is and what isn't happening right now. You can see when sales numbers come out for EVs and find out they're actually selling very well right now. And you got a lot of people that are out there that are pushing something from some other media source that says that no one in America wants an electric car, right? That there's AI at play there, but more or less, it's about narratives and the veracity of what people
yeah.
believe
I
is better
think
what
on
they think, right?
the EV side, there's two sides. One side has predicted that we're at the tipping point of massive EV purchases, and I've always pushed back against that narrative because the investment hasn't been there on the infrastructure side. A and then B, we've also it was very early on was turned into a climate based conversation as opposed to what's the better vehicle. And then now I think even is with the Chinese
Yes,
threat, it's a national security issue too. Um, and then the other side being no one wants an EV. Well, that's not true either. Um, so uh,
true,
and now we've got all the murkiness and muddy, of the tariffs and the EV tax benefit going away here in October. I think what that's going to do is it's going to push back a little bit the timing, but I think we'll have a better idea of where true customer demand is. And I think we just have to. I think the growing realization now is okay. This is going to take a while. This isn't going to be overnight, and I think it's just
yeah,
gonna. We're just going to have to let this play out and let the markets decide. Now, to me, the big question mark there is China. Uh, I should we as a country go all in on the EV side to protect us against China, a Chinese threat? Because if they get in, are those vehicles really going to really going to be in demand? And I think for as great as BYD the story is there's a lot of the story we don't see, and we don't see the profitability. We don't see
totally
the actual quality of these vehicles. There's a lot there that I think needs to be looked at closely, rather than just sales numbers. And and I think
true.
it's I don't think the story there is as great as it looks on the surface. So
No, I
yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, it's and a lot of what we're talking about, and a lot of what Chris and I talk about on this show is
Right.
data ownership, and the competitive advantage you have when you have more and more unique data that other people don't. And in the great, in the great view of the China threat, and I don't think it's them alone, but but when you mentioned connected vehicles earlier, and the more connectivity that people outside the country have with our lives, which which can
Yes.
be
Yeah.
on our
Yeah. Right.
phones, which
Right.
already is on everybody's phone in some capacity. But and
Yeah.
we
No.
can
Yeah.
we don't have to
Sure.
debate on what
Sure.
that's done just in terms um, of 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 beliefs here. But where I'm going with that is, um, I think I think if you're a dealer group, or you're a vendor serving the industry right now, um, this is also where you've got to make the best decisions in terms of data governance, and ultimately what you do to protect the privacy and security, correct, of your employees, your inventory, but also
Right.
your customers. Um, and I don't know, is that something that anybody's talking about around in your world with Autovate, or are they on the front end of survival and understanding who they need to acquire,
Well, certainly, I
or who they
think
may sell
the
to?
bigger players, Reynolds, J Power, and others, cars. I mean, they are certainly focused on the security issue. I mean, Reynolds has been for a couple of decades now. CDK. But I will say this: I think at the dealer level, there is kind of I think a thought process. It's not verbalized often, but it's, well, I'm one of 18,000 or so. If I get hit, I get hit. I'll pay the price. But I'm not going to upset my life or upset the apple cart here, um, for something that may or may not happen. And I think there is, uh, yeah, I think they're doing the bare minimum to protect themselves. And I think, to your point, you used the word survival. I mean, I think, Tim, and there's a very real aspect of that conversation. I mean, and I don't know that they're wrong. I mean, my friends in the IT security, cybersecurity world are going to throw stuff at me. I mean, from the audience, if I say that. But I think every dealer's and vendor's got to make their decisions on how they approach this. But I tell you, if go ahead, Chris.
I really thought, I was just saying, I really thought that the CDK hack last summer was going to create a massive change. Like, in terms of dealers and the groups owning their data, bringing it in house, taking more responsibility for it, and we see some of it. Like, they're trying to, but there's such small numbers of groups that are even putting up their own data on their own, virtual
Right,
private
right.
cloud, or trying to put it into a data lake or anything like that. Were you surprised that there wasn't more
No,
innovation that came
no, I
out of that
wasn't.
CDK hack?
One, um,
I'm the only one that was
dealers have
surprised.
short memories. I mean, yeah, very short memories
They
on
do.
this. And then B, the damage to CDK was nominal. I mean, it could have been and should have been a lot worse than what it was. They escaped, and I know people that don't believe the story, that customer data wasn't taken, but I'll tell you what, the FBI had to. I mean, no, the FBI had to sign off on that statement. I mean, there's no way Brian, in the leadership team would have put that out there if they were lying. I mean, they go to
Agreed.
jail. I mean, why risk that? I mean, it's uh, so I mean, think the fact that they were able to escape that, uh, unlike most companies that get hacked like that. I mean, was was fortuitous. I think too that the hack was probably on some of the lesser defended, or the stuff that they picked up in acquisitions in recent years. Maybe the real meat wasn't. of the data wasn't. I don't know. I mean, I haven't dug into it recently. But yeah, I honestly, Chris, I really wasn't surprised because I I just I spend so much time talking to dealers and really and I said this. I mean, you know um that I depending on what the damage was going to be, I think that really set the stage. Just the level of damage set the stage for what I think it.
Well, I just thought that a dealer goes down for 4, 6, 8 weeks. That at some point that job, someone's grabbing somebody's lapels in the middle of that dealership and just shaking. Be like, what do you mean we don't have access to any of our customer data? What do you mean our DMS is
Oh,
down? And
there were
we
some
don't have
very
anything
real,
saved
very
anywhere. Like
tough
just those
conversations
kind
with
of
City.
basic
Yeah, I know
things.
that. I mean, there no doubt. I mean, yeah, but
Oh yeah.
I know
So that
dealers.
part, yes. But I just assumed that the dealer would say, okay, I know CD,
No, no,
we're
no,
not
no.
crashing down on CDK or Reynolds or anything like that. I
Right,
know that my DMS is not going to save me
right,
here.
right, right.
Therefore, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z to
Yeah,
protect my
yeah,
most
yeah,
precious
yeah.
asset, which we
Well, I
always
think
say
there's
is the customer data.
certainly there were.
Yeah.
I don't. I remember talking to a West Coast dealer group that got hacked over the Christmas holiday, and this was one of the first. And I'll say this, Chris. I wrote in 2014 a report on detailing how dealerships were going to become the next front on the cybersecurity battle, and wrote actually ransom. Usually, I predicted ransomware was going to become a massive threat in our industry. And at the time, very few people had heard of what ransomware attacks were. Well, since then, hundreds of dealerships have been attacked by ransomware. I mean, just looking at the numbers in the last 11
Right.
years since I wrote that report. And I was talking to a West Coast dealer, and he said, "Yeah, we didn't write the check, or we didn't pay the crypto, that they were demanding." And this was a few years ago now. And he said, "But we had to go back and rewrite all of our pipe, rebuild our structure." And he did it in a way that protected them so that if one thing got hacked, so they basically compartmentalized their operations. And that's probably the smart thing to do. I mean, and I'm sure there are dealers that have
Right.
done that. I mean, but again, I know I've talked to dealers that have said, well, we'll do what the law requires. And that pretty much, is it. We're not going to go out of our way because chances of my getting hit, are small. But I tell you, you talk to some of these dealers, your point, you get hit,
Small.
you're writing,
Yeah.
you're losing $2, $3, $4 million over a 2-week, 3-week span.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Well,
I hope people.
yeah. I'm hoping people, um, their hangover is worn off and they've got some clarity now. And I think AI is going to help that a lot. Real quick,
Yeah,
we're
I
at
know.
time
We
here,
can talk all
Cliff, and we really
day.
thank you for being here. But we absolutely could tell if you can real quick, just share with us how people can learn more about Autovate and how they can
Yeah,
buy tickets, why
autovate.org
they need to be there.
is the website, and everything's there. It's in Scottsdale, September 24th, 25th. And, I tell you, I mean, we try to be very forward thinking and we make predictions and as to what we think is going to happen. Um, we've been wrong. We've been right on several. I think we were very early on in 2017 and 18 talking about AI and what it is and what it isn't, long before the LLMs and ChatGPTs exploded on the scene. But we were having a conversation back then.
Right.
In 2022, a year before Amazon Autos announced their play, we were talking about what the play was going to be, and we nailed it, I think. So, and then we also early 2000 or 2021, 22, I guess it was 22. We talked about the coming China threat, and this was months before people had seen it. But we had an analyst, Michael Dunn, who had been at Shanghai Auto Show and came back and said, "Guys, you know, this
Yes.
is what's going to happen," and he nailed it. And we were dead on. So the early day, I think we're very.
Yep.
I couldn't be
Yeah,
more excited to be attending,
Yeah.
man.
yeah,
I can't wait to. This will be my first Autovate, but just attending and seeing the spectacle and the mystique of it, I'm really
puts
excited
pressure
about.
on
Definitely.
Chris. Yeah, put the pressure on. We got to perform, but no, I know. We no, we're looking forward to it, and yeah, and I think guys like you
this
and Tim
Philly kid
certainly
to have a
being,
good time.
yeah, I think really partnering with us, and then being on stage.
I'm coming
That's
just
good.
to
Well,
throw juju bees
it's
in
funny.
Yeah,
maybe
you
from the
put,
crowd.
yeah.
Funny
No
story. A
rotten
few years ago, we
tomatoes.
had
Yeah.
Google and Facebook, and I had Facebook on stage, and an argument broke out between the two during my conversation with Facebook, between Google and Facebook. It was quite quite funny. One of those highlights, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's that. Well, call it mystique if you want to, Chris. That's the magic of
Thank you,
Autovate.
guys.
Thank you, Cliff. I mean, thanks for being with us today, but definitely looking forward to seeing you in Scottsdale later this month, and anybody else who's going to join us there for Autovate. But
Thank you.
appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks so much, Cliff.